Hello YouTube. In this video I'm going to teach you how to make fried rice at home with a very simple recipe that is completely idiot proof. Meaning that as long as you have opposable thumbs, you will be able to complete this recipe and have a nice lunch. And as you can see, it's time for lunch. So I'm actually going to show you exactly how you have to go through each step. There's not many steps, it's very easy, and it's an actually really delicious meal that anyone can prepare. It's extremely cheap, it's very nutritious, and just like with anything I tend to eat and cook for myself, it's just done with very simple ingredients. There's nothing complicated about that at all. You won't be able to really see my face, that doesn't matter. Focus on what's going on here. So first off, for the ingredients you're going to have to want to make fried rice, you're going to need eggs, you're going to need some rice, of course, and then another source of protein or another consistent element that you can add to the mix to give more flavor if you want. This is not necessary at all because this is already extremely tasty. So first thing you're going to do is I'm going to put some olive oil at the bottom of the pan so that it doesn't stick to it. This is my recipe, by the way. You will see that it's completely different to what you could find in Asian cuisine because unlike what my jet black hair can tell you, I'm not Asian. So if I have any Cantonese subscribers who are going to be upset at this, I profoundly apologize. I know that you guys are numerous on the channel. So you let that olive oil in there. You're just going to make sure that it's evenly spread. And then you're going to crack your first few eggs. So it depends on how much you want. The first layer of eggs we're going to get in there is going to be the chunks of eggs in the fried rice. So if you like a lot of chunks, you put a lot of eggs. If you like only a few, you're going to put only a few. For me, I like 4 to 5. It depends on the quantity that you're going to actually put in terms of rice. And here, what you want with these eggs is you don't want them to be too soft because they are going to constitute the chewy and the base of the meal pretty much. So it doesn't need to be too liquid. That being said, keep in mind that they're going to be cooked throughout the entire process of making the fried rice. Therefore, you don't want them to be too cooked either. So what I usually suggest at this point is you're going to only let them cook for as long as the white is liquid, meaning that at this stage here, the whites are still fully liquid. As you can see, it's not fully solidified yet, so it still gets to cook for a little bit. When it comes to the rest of the ingredients, as I said, you need rice. For the rice, there's multiple methods to do it. You can make fresh rice. If you make fresh rice, understand that it's going to absorb moisture much better, and therefore the rice is going to be softer. So it depends on what you like. I like a more consistent type of rice for my fried rice. So I usually pre-cook the rice. I leave it in the fridge for 1-2 days so it solidifies and it also loses some of the moisture, and then I use it. All right. The white has solidified. I'm just going to break it because what you want for fried rice is you want the yolk and the white to be mixed in the chunks. Okay, you don't want them to be separated. That's not the point. So you want them nice and mixed, and usually the best way to accomplish that is you wait until the whites are solidified, but the yolks are still runny, and then when you mix them, the yellow of the egg is going to magically spread with the white. So as you do that, this is first step. All right, so these are all of the chunks. This is the amount that is going to be in my fried rice. Here, I'm going to start putting les condiments, as we say. So for example, here I like some onion powder on my rice. I like some garlic powder as well. Chill on the garlic powder, it's extremely strong. And some salt, of course, you can get whatever salt you like. For me, I have some pink salt right there. So just a tiny bit. All right. And the stage here doesn't last too long, okay? You don't want the eggs to actually cook because the rice is going to go in there and they're going to continuously cook. So here, you added whatever flavor you like. You can add spicy stuff. I don't recommend you put salsa at this stage because the goal is for these guys to solidify. So if you don't let them solidify, it's not going to be fried rice anymore, it's going to be some sort of goo. So as you continue, you can also separate them, right? So you make tiny chunks. It depends on the size of the chunks you like. I like them small. So here, all done. And now I'm going to show you exactly what they look like. It should look like this. So they're not white, they're not yellow, they're in between. But as you can see, this is the level also where they're not perfectly mixed, which means that there are portions that have more yolk in them, and that, to me, gives a little bit more surprise to the fried rice. It makes it a little bit more entertaining as you eat it. Because of course, the goal of fried rice is to be able to eat rice, which is a really good food in my opinion, a good source of carbs, without going completely insane. Because rice, white rice every day can be a little bit boring after a while. All right, so now, just with the sound I can tell, because I make this all the time, but they're ready. Meaning that I don't want them to cook more than that in this state. So now I have my rice. I'm just going to add as much as I want. It can be a lot, it can be a little, depends on the amount of chunks you have in there. For the rice, I recommend Thai rice for fried rice. I find that jasmine rice tends to be too rigid. And I also don't recommend doing it with sticky rice. Because as you will see, the stickiness is going to come from the eggs. So you really don't want to add more, because if you do that, it's just going to end up being like a soup, and you want it to be consistent, of course. So for the rice, a nice little cover of rice. You can add as much as you want, as I said, but don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, it's going to be a lot of rice and a tiny bit of eggs, and that's not going to be good. So here I have an even cover. I'm going to call it at that. That is good. I don't need the rice anymore. Okay, so here, as you can tell, the eggs are still cooking underneath. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to crack eggs on top of the rice, right? That's what's going to make it fried rice. So here, you don't have to mix them right away. Keep in mind, however, that the clock is ticking because your eggs are cooking underneath, all right? They're being slowly cooked. So if you're not fast enough, they're going to just burn, and you don't want that. You crack your eggs. Here, I think I'm going to stop around here. All right. Yeah, maybe one more. One more egg. And what that's going to do is, this is going to constitute the envelope of the rice. Because as you mix it, right, you don't have to be careful or delicate. You want the yolk to soak into the rice. It's going to imbue itself in the rice. And make sure when you do that to also go underneath and recuperate the chunks. You don't want them to just sit at the bottom forever. Right, so now you mix them nicely, and there should be too much moisture at this point, meaning that it should look liquidy. It's not going to stay that way, but it needs to be at this state. Because for the rice to be able to be actually the nice yellow golden color of fried rice, you actually do need a lot of eggs. Don't need to add as many as I have, but a decent amount is appreciated. So here, I'm at a state where this is good because I actually made a mistake. See, I can tell right now that it's too liquidy. So what I'm going to do is very simple. Add more rice. Right? Because at this point, it's going to take too long to cook, and it's just going to end up being just goo, and I don't want that. I want it to be solid. So if I add more rice, I have more surface area to absorb the moisture, and it's going to cook exactly the way I want. And the good thing with fried rice too is that it keeps for a very long time. It keeps for 7 to 9 days in the fridge. So you can make a ton because you know you'll eat it. I can guarantee you that you will not have a problem eating that stuff. It is absolutely delicious. All right, more rice, perfect. It's going to get me to the level where I want to be. So now I'm going to make sure that the other grains absorb all of that egg, all of that yolk, because at some point you're going to have to add some olive oil on top of that. So you really want it to be a little bit dry, right? Because the cooking process ends when the rice is dry. Because we're at a stage now where consumption is not going to be very pleasurable for you because there's still a lot of water in those eggs and in that rice. So everything is evenly spread like this. All right. So now, when it comes to the temperature, you can preheat with whatever temperature you want. I would advise you to start with low temp at first with the eggs. Let them get to the level you want so that you don't have to rush and maybe you're not super comfortable with cracking eggs or anything. You get them to the level you want, and then when you're at this stage here, once you start cracking the eggs on top of the rice, you can crank up the heat because there is absolutely no risk of it burning, I can tell you that. There's the reason why I say it's idiot proof. You cannot fuck up that meal, it's not possible. For one simple reason, the only way you can mess it up is if you let it burn. But the thing is, this will never burn because there's way too much moisture in it. Your goal at this point is simple. You want the rice to get dry. That way, each little portion is going to absorb as much of the yolk and of the white of the egg as possible. It's going to be delicious, and the texture is going to be just right. Because fried rice is this, it's the marriage of the firmness of the rice and the softness of the egg. And that's what makes it so good. The best fried rice are like this. The best I've ever tasted in my life in Asian restaurants were with a firm rice and a soft egg. And what brings flavor to the entire thing is the eggs. Meaning that if you're looking for maybe a vegan option, I'm not sure how you're going to do it. Maybe if some vegans make fried rice, you can let me know, but I'm not sure. So what you want to do here is, as I say, let it dry. But the bottom portion gets drier first. So what you want is, you remove the bottom portion, you rotate, just like you would rotate lifts, so that there's no overuse injuries. You rotate the rice so that the rice doesn't get burnt. And also the portions at the top end up also receiving the heat directly. So always make sure to do that. You can't, it's hard to miss that meal, but don't let it unsupervised. It's like a toddler. So here, as you can see, I can show you. Here, this is the color that you want the rice to have. It's called fried rice for a reason. It's nice and golden, still a little bit too watery at this point, but it can cook more. The good thing at this point too is that you will not deteriorate the quality of the food by having it cook more. It's not an issue. So let's put away the stuff that I don't need anymore. And for the sweet, maybe if you don't want to use eggs, you could just do with olive oil, but I can tell you that the flavor is not going to be the same. It's not going to be nearly as good. So, at this stage, the fried rice is almost over. There are two more steps to add. The first step is going to be obligatory in my opinion. It's going to be adding olive oil at the end to just elevate it to a whole new level. Because it goes, first off, fried rice at the start wasn't with eggs. It was just rice with oil. And the eggs, of course, add more flavor, so it's great, but don't forget the oil. But I'm going to actually intercede another stage at this point because, as you can see, there's a lot of rice. And I told you that it's a great meal, so you're not going to get bored. But a little bit of a kick won't hurt. So first off, we're going to actually season that rice. Because I haven't yet. And you can do the seasoning at any point, right? You start the seasoning with the egg, the chunks at the bottom, then you season whenever. So I'm going to add more salt, and you can be generous, like there's so much in there. Rice soaks up salt like you wouldn't believe, all right? Some onion powder, that's my preference, a lot of onion powder actually. Here. And some garlic. You can add pepper, I don't recommend it, I think it doesn't go well with pepper. For the salt, maybe some people say maybe that's a lot of salt. If you work out, you need salt, you need minerals in your diet. Sodium is not the enemy, inactivity is. Of course, get your blood pressure level checked, but at the end of the day, it's needed for the contraction of muscles, all right? It's needed for the water retention in the muscles. So it's a necessary part of your diet. You need to control it. But I can tell you one thing. This is a home-cooked meal. The amount of salt I put in this is nothing. The food that you buy at the supermarket has 5 times as much sodium as this. So don't be shy when you make your own food to season it, to add salt. It needs it, alright? Okay. We're gonna mix, on touille, comme on dit en français, so that all of the spices can be spread. And my rice is nice here. It's nice. It's not dry yet, of course, but it's nice. So this is the stage where I'm going to actually add a new ingredient. And for the new ingredient, you can do whatever. Like my favorite at this point is chicken. If you can add white, like chicken breast in there, it's heaven. You can add shrimps. You can add, I don't really recommend beef because it's going to be too rich. Same for pork. Maybe some type of lean cut of pork, like white, le jambon blanc, for those you know, like ham. Ham goes well with this, lean ham. Turkey goes well, but I don't really like it. You can add fake meats if you're a vegan, etc. Here I'm going to actually go with sausages. And these are veggie sausages, right? So they're not super rich. They have a really strong flavor though. And that's going to be good because the thing with fried rice is that it's flavorful, it's savory, but it lacks that like meaty flavor that keeps your interest going. So the sausages are going to actually follow that role. And as you can see, you don't have to have a lot of sausages. I'm just going to add a tiny bit, just so that once in a while you get a little bit of a, a little bit of a thing going. But you don't want the sausages to overwhelm the rice because the king dish is the fried rice. And fried rice can be served. I mean, if you have people over and you're not a complete NEET, you can serve fried rice with any sort of salad. Usually, I like cabbage salad. I think that it goes really well with it on the side, so that you go from something that's quite heavy, it's quite a heavy meal, with something more light. And if you're thinking about wines, white wine, of course. Okay. So the sausages are going to pair themselves with the rice. I don't need to cook the sausages. They're going to be cooked by the heat of the rice. And of course, I make sure that the bottom is not burning. And here my rice is dry, all right? I'm going to show it to you, but it is. And because it is, it means that we are almost done. So what you want to do here is very simple. First off, all right. That's a chunky casserole. Alright, so this is what I call dry. Alright, you can see that there's no surface level moisture. Alright, it's nice and separated, it's not a unit anymore. Each grain of rice is its own individual person. And now we're going to top it off with some olive oil. So what you want is, you want to regain just enough moisture that it's glistening, but not enough that it goes back and reverts back to the previous state. So, this is going to be it, all right? So as you can see, I don't wait anything, I don't have time for that nonsense, I just do it with my instinct. But also understand that I've been doing that recipe for years, so I know what I'm doing. For you, maybe be a little bit more careful, add ingredients, look at the state, etc. And one thing you can do that you haven't seen me do yet is a taste test, right? Make sure that it's at the level of saltiness, of spice that you like. Because if it's your first time doing it, it's going to be a little bit approximative. But for me, I don't need to. Alright, so now I'm going to actually cut here, cut the heat. Once you add the oil, you cut the heat. You don't want the oil to cook with the rice. It just needs to sit there. It needs to absorb it, and the heat is going to help. Alright? Perfect. So now, I'm going to show you exactly what I meant. The glistening is back. Okay, so you can see that it's shiny now. That's because each grain of rice is coated with oil now. That's perfect. That's what you want. Right? As you can see, it's golden, but it's not yellow. Because if it was yellow, it would mean that I put too many yolks, and then it's not balanced. It's in between white and yellow. At this stage, I'm going to have my first test. Okay? So here, if I were to grade it, I'd give it a 6. I used rice that was too tough. So, easy remedy, more oil. More oil, and garlic level, onion level perfect, a bit more salt. Yeah, not my best, not my best. Rice was just too old. So I would advise, if you're a beginner, try and make this with freshly made rice. It's going to be a little bit easier, especially because it's going to add more moisture, so there's no chance of you ending up with dry rice and then having to adjust like what I'm doing here. But this is the end of the recipe. So as you can tell, it's a gargantuous amount of food. It's pretty cheap, because eggs and rice are cheap. Yep. And at the end, it needs to taste a little bit like oil. You need to be able to taste the olive oil in it. And something I advise is, try to find a chunk. Yeah. So that's good. That's what I want. So this is going to go directly into a Tupperware. And I'm going to actually put it in the fridge directly because I want to maintain the moisture. I don't want it to evaporate too quickly. So in the fridge directly. And that is going to be that for your fried rice recipe. If you like the chunks to be a little bit more burnt, a little bit more brown, like this guy, for example, if I can show you. This guy is a bit more brown. It's because he cooked longer. So that's up to you to decide. But I'm going to leave you with that. This is how you make good fried rice. Have a good day.